The war in Europe was ending, but one SS general still controlled the fate of 1 million soldiers. And in the shadows of collapsing Nazi Germany, he chose to betray everything he had once sworn to defend. Spring 1945. The Third Reich was dying by the hour. Cities burned, armies collapsed. The sound of artillery echoed across borders that no longer mattered. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler shouted orders that no longer reached anyone. But far to the south, in the mountains and valleys of northern Italy, another battlefield remained alive and deadly. More than 1 million German troops were still holding the line there. Hardened soldiers, SS units, fascist loyalists. They had orders to fight to the last man. And between them and surrender stood one man, Karl Wolff. Wolff was not a frontline commander. He was something more dangerous, a political soldier, a senior SS general, a man who had once stood close to Heinrich Himmler himself. He understood power, loyalty, and survival better than most. For years, he had helped build the machinery of Nazi control, and now he could see the machine breaking apart. By early 1945, everyone inside the German leadership sensed the end. But admitting defeat was treason. Talking about surrender meant death. The SS, above all, demanded absolute loyalty. Men were still being executed for suggesting negotiations with the Allies. Yet Wolff began to think differently. He looked at maps that made no sense anymore. Soviet forces closing from the east, American and British armies pushing north through Italy, supplies vanishing, fuel nearly gone. Still, Hitler demanded resistance. He wanted cities turned into fortresses. He wanted sacrifice. He wanted history to remember that Germany had never given up. But Wolff saw another reality. If fighting continued, northern Italy would become a slaughterhouse. Civilians would die in massive numbers. His soldiers would be crushed. And he knew something else. If captured as an SS leader, his own future looked grim. So he did something almost unthinkable. He reached out to the enemy. Through secret channels, whispers began to move. Swiss intermediaries, quiet meetings arranged far from the front lines. The Americans were suspicious. Why would an SS general suddenly want peace? Was it a trick, a delay tactic, or a desperate attempt to save himself? The man listening on the Allied side was Alan Dulles, the head of American intelligence operations in Switzerland. Dulles understood the stakes immediately. If Wolff was serious, this could end the war in Italy weeks early. Thousands of lives could be spared. But if it was deception, it could cost everything. The meetings were dangerous. Every step risked exposure. If Hitler learned of them, Wolff would be executed. If the Allies exposed the talks publicly, the negotiations would collapse. Even among the Allies, politics became a battlefield. The Soviets were furious at being excluded, suspecting secret deals behind their backs. Meanwhile, the front lines continued to burn. German units fought stubbornly across rivers and mountain passes. Allied bombers hammered transportation routes. Civilians hid in basements while artillery thunder rolled day and night. And all the while, Karl Wolff traveled quietly, meeting enemy representatives while still wearing the uniform of the SS. He promised something enormous, the surrender of all German forces in Italy. At first, the Americans did not believe him. Could one man really deliver such an order? Could soldiers trained to obey Hitler accept commands to lay down their weapons? Wolff insisted he could. He still had influence over commanders. He still had access to the chain of command, but time was running out. Inside Germany, paranoia exploded. Himmler himself began exploring separate peace talks in other places, trying to save what he could. Trust inside the Nazi leadership evaporated. Everyone feared betrayal. Everyone feared being blamed when the end came. For Wolff, the risk grew every day. He walked a tightrope between two worlds. To the Allies, he was a war criminal in negotiation. To his own side, he was a potential traitor. If either side lost trust, he would disappear. Then came the final push. By April 1945, Allied armies broke through key defensive lines in northern Italy. German resistance started to crumble. Retreat routes were cut. Panic spread among commanders. Some wanted to fight on. Others simply wanted survival. The moment Wolff had promised was arriving. In secret rooms filled with smoke and tension, final terms were prepared. The Allies demanded unconditional surrender, no bargaining, no political deals. Wolff pushed back, trying to protect his officers, trying to secure better treatment, but the answer remained firm. The war was over. He agreed. On April 29, 1945, representatives of German forces in Italy signed the surrender documents. The agreement would take effect days later. More than 1 million soldiers, German and Axis personnel, would cease fighting. Yet even then, danger remained. If hardline Nazis learned the truth too early, they might sabotage the agreement. Some commanders ignored orders. Others continued fighting, unaware that the war around them had already ended on paper. Communication lines collapsed. Confusion reigned. Then came the moment. May 2nd, 1945. The guns in Italy fell silent. After years of brutal combat, entire armies laid down their weapons, roads filled with exhausted soldiers marching into captivity instead of dying in final battles. Civilians emerged cautiously from shelters, stunned by the sudden quiet. Wolff had delivered what he promised. To the Allies, it was a strategic victory. The surrender freed resources for the final operations in Europe and prevented needless destruction. Historians would later argue that tens of thousands of lives likely were saved. But to Karl Wolff, the story did not end in triumph. The war ended only days later across Europe. Nazi Germany collapsed completely. The leaders who had once seemed untouchable now stood as prisoners or corpses. And Wolff, the man who had negotiated surrender, faced a new reality. He hoped his cooperation would protect him. For years, he argued that his actions helped shorten the war. He presented himself as a pragmatic figure, a man who chose peace over fanaticism at the final moment. But history is rarely forgiving. Investigators uncovered his deep connections to the SS system. His earlier involvement in the machinery of Nazi rule could not simply be erased by one act of surrender. He was arrested, questioned, and eventually tried for war crimes related to deportations that sent thousands toward death. The image of the savior blurred. Was he a realist trying to stop bloodshed, or an opportunist trying to save himself as the regime collapsed? The answer remains complicated. What is undeniable is the scale of what happened in those final days. One SS general, a man born within the system, helped bring the fighting in Italy to an abrupt end. 1 million men who might have died in mountains and ruined cities instead marched home or into prisoner camps. Yet that decision came only when defeat was certain. As Europe celebrated victory, questions lingered in silence. Could earlier choices have saved more lives? How many men had followed orders until the very edge of destruction because leaders refused to admit reality? Wolff's surrender became one of the war's strangest endings, not a battlefield victory, but a negotiation in shadows, a deal made by enemies who knew the killing had gone too far. In the end, the man who helped stop the guns could not escape the weight of the uniform he wore. History remembers him not as a hero, nor simply as a villain, but something darker, a reminder that even in the final hours of war, survival, guilt, and power are never cleanly separated. The mountains of Italy grew quiet after May 1945. The smoke cleared, the armies vanished, but the question remains, echoing long after the last shot. When the end finally comes, do men choose peace because it is right, or because they know they have already lost?